Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Robin and Nash from Vallie. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us on, Kevin.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think what you guys are doing is very, very cool. But before we kind of maybe get into that, let's get to know each of you a little bit better and maybe cover your background. So maybe Nash, do you want to kind of start and introduce yourself and kind of where you grew up?
Sure. Happy to do it. I'm born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. Yes. I went to university at Columbia in New York.
Okay.
Started working at Google right out of university in 2007. Went to Mountain View, lived in San Francisco. Worked at Google for 2 years and went to a nearby startup called AdMob. Worked there for about a year and a half, and then came back to Google because Google bought AdMob. I worked at Google as head of mobile ad operations in North America and then in Singapore. I left Google in 2012 to become an entrepreneur. Started a health technology consulting business, started an online advertising network that we subsequently sold, and then moved to London because I got married. Along the way, I met Robin, and we decided to build Vallie together.
Very cool. Robin, do you want to maybe give a kind of an intro of yourself and your background and kind of where you grew up?
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to. Being British, ironically, I didn't actually grow up in England. My father was in the Foreign Office. I was born in South America, grew up across India, wow, Jamaica, Western Europe. I had been at school since a fairly young age in the UK. Obviously, I went to uni in the UK, studied at Oxford. After uni, I went into the city. And for my sins, I became an investment banker, where I spent 7 years trading interest rate derivatives, first at Credit Suisse, the Swiss bank, and then later at Barclays. I'd always had a burning desire to get into the tech space, certainly to build my own business. And finally, I took the plunge and I left. I went through an engineering boot camp. Those kind of schools are not that common in London, but there is one place which is particularly good and modeled on the kind of US engineering boot camp curriculum. Spent 4 months learning as much as possible about the engineering side of running a technology company. Out of that, I actually founded my first business. It's called GoWashMyCar.com, mobile car wash marketplace. And then that's kind of how Nash and I got talking about doing stuff together. We'd been introduced by a mutual friend prior to that, discussing a lot about that business, the on-demand space, and got really excited about on-demand parking, and pretty soon thereafter decided to start building Vallie, which was, I think we wrote our first lines of code in April last year and then launched on the App Store in November.
Very, very cool. So maybe before we get into Vallie, I'm just kind of curious to know how each one of you kind of got into technology, whether as a kid or kind of, when in your life you kind of got into it.
Yeah, sure. I can start there.
Sure.
I've definitely been into technology since I don't know, maybe like fifth grade or fourth grade when we were one of the first families in my neighborhood to get an IBM 386.
Yeah, I had that.
This was just when AOL 3.0 was coming out in the US, and I got pretty excited about Whereas. I could chat
totally.
Trade music and like download punters and mail bombers and all that stuff. So
That's
I was doing that back in fifth grade, and I think then I went on to gaming and other technology things, but that's how it started.
Sure.
I'll chip in. I was also always into gaming as well, but I can remember from the age of about 17 being obsessed with the idea of building a tech startup, and it was when the internet was in a very different, the landscape of tech businesses was very different to what it is today. But I was still searching around online for interesting URLs. I remember my first idea was actually it's an idea called Teen Date. It was going to be a dating app for people in their late teens. That actually never came to fruition, but I think from a young age, I'd always had saw myself as building a large technology company one day, or at least wanted to.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. So maybe let's get into what Vallie is and exactly kind of the idea behind it and kind of why did you guys decide to start it?
Sure. I can start there.
Sure.
Well, we're starting Valley because parking is a huge pain in London.
Sure.
All you have to do is go onto Twitter and search parking London, and you'll see all the rants that happen on a daily basis. There's even a TV show called Parking Wars here. That's pretty popular. Uh, so it's painful, and the government, has also put in a congestion charge and taken other initiatives to kind of get less vehicles into the city, and therefore people who are driving in are not given much attention. It's hard to find parking on the street. If you do find it, you have to suffer like really short time limits, 2 hours, 3 hours. They're really quick to ticket. If you look into commercial parking, it's super expensive. The average is about £40 per day. And if you're in kind of the main areas of like Soho, Oxford Street, it's £50 per day,
Wow.
which in US dollars, that's like $65. It's actually the most expensive parking in the world. Um, and then at the same time, you have these like really interesting pricing dynamics where it's £50 per day and in Soho, and just literally a kilometer away over at Russell Square, it's £30 per day. And so parking prices differ dramatically over short distances. And so we're kind of seeing these as kind of signals of dysfunction, and ways to make parking better. And so we started Valley to make not just parking easier, but the act of owning a car and bringing a car into London, making that whole the whole ownership model a lot easier. And so that's what our service is. Our service at its core is basically taking one of the major frustrations out of driving. Which is parking. And so, as a driver, you can drive up to anywhere you want, use our app to request a valet who will meet you at that location and be waiting for you as you drive up. That valet will take your car, park it for you, and then you can use the app to request it back whenever you want. And you can kind of see the location of your car and valet at all times in real time via the app, and all payments are automated in the app as well.
That's awesome. So I'm kind of curious. So how do I kind of sign up and kind of get started in this? Like, have you guys launched this yet?
Yeah, we've launched for a while.
Okay.
We launched in November. We started off with a kind of a pilot area just around the east side of London, around the Barbican Centre and Liverpool Street. After a month, that was pretty successful, and now we've expanded to westward in London and now cover a big chunk of kind of central London, all the main neighborhoods like Mayfair and Soho and Holborn. So basically, we cover most of London's congestion zone, as it's known to drivers.
Sure. You mentioned there's some sort of fee that I need to pay, like congestion fee. Was that what you mentioned? What is that exactly?
Yeah, it's kind of like a toll for coming into central
Okay.
London, and
Okay.
so drivers who are driving into central London between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Sorry, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday and Friday pay a £10 surcharge.
Wow. Okay. So walk me through kind of the process. How do I kind of go from signing up to kind of you know, getting picked up, I guess.
So I can probably talk you through that.
Sure.
Obviously, we're on the App Store. It's like any other app. You download it, you register. It's very simple, just email and a password. And before booking, we ask you to put in your credit card so that we can manage all payments at the end of the process in an automatic fashion. And our app, it really works like any other app that involves real-time location updates and setting locations via a map. You can either search a location via the map. You just press a button in the middle of the screen. It says "Book my Valley." That then sends a request off to our server, and we query our valleys who are roaming around the center of London. We have a sort of algorithm which determines who should be assigned. The Vallie accepts the order, and then the customer is told, hey, there's a Vallie available. They see a Meet Your Vallie screen, a picture of the Vallie. They have easy sort of facility to send them an SMS or to call them. And everything from that point is updated in real time as both the customer and the matched Vallie progress towards what we call the drop-off point, which is where the exchange will take place. The app lets them know what the estimated transit time is for the Vallie to reach the point, and the assigned Vallie has the same experience in their app as well. Then the two sort of meet up, on the side of the road somewhere where it's safe to pull over. We have some security controls around the actual exchange of the vehicle itself. We sort of a randomly generated 4-digit number. Obviously, our customers are concerned that the person who's meeting on the street is a representative of the company. So they match this security code. And after that, the customer's on their way. They remain updated at all times as to the location of their car. They can see the Vallie drive off from the meeting point towards the assigned car park, track them in real time. And then once the car's parked, that's really it. From that point on, the customer sees what we call the return booking screen, where they book a return point in much the same way as they set their original drop-off location. And then it's really just an unwind of that process. We send someone to the car park to collect the car. They bring the car from the car park to the return point, and the customer at the end of the process has an opportunity to add a tip and provide us some feedback on the whole experience. It's probably worth mentioning, actually, that one of the real advantages of a Vallie is that the return point doesn't need to be the same as the drop-off point. It can actually be anywhere in the congestion zone, so to speak. So for shoppers, for instance, who drop their car off at one point of the shopping area in central London, they can roam around and do their business and not think about where they're going to end up. And then when they want their vehicle back, they just request it back and we bring it back to where they've ended up.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. I love the whole concept, and kind of when we first got put in touch with each other, it was just like, oh my God, I need to have these guys on the show, because you're taking such a pain point for a lot of people and solving like a huge problem for them. And I love that idea. And I just wanted to have you guys on the show because I kind of wish that you guys were in my area, and I'm sure that you will be at some point. It's just I was hoping you'd be, in my area sooner than later. But I think that's awesome, right? I think it's really cool. So I'm curious to know kind of what does the user pay, and kind of how does pricing work?
Yeah, well, the user pays either £5 per hour or £25 per day max. So
Okay.
if you cut it for 6 hours, it's only £25 per day, and that's all inclusive. That includes the cost of the collection and the return. That includes the cost of parking. So £5 per hour, £25 per day, all in.
Sure.
Sure.
So
So
how does it work with you guys, and kind of finding the Valley guys? Like, is it almost kind of like Uber, where I just pull up the screen and I can see all the different guys that are ready to come get my car?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And so how do you, I guess, like, are those people just like, how do you screen the people that are gonna be picking up my car? Do I basically, or can anybody do it, or are they kind of employees, or how does that work?
They're absolutely employees, and we spend a lot of time actually hiring. It's kind of the most important part of the business, is the Vallie who's going to drive your car
Sure.
rather than the app. And so what we do is we have a multi-step interview process that's composed of first off an online application form which pre-screens for a lot of things, and then an in-person interview, and then a driving test, and then another online interview, and then a subsequent background check, through a company called Onfido, where we do driving history, criminal history, even credit report, alongside other things like right to work and identity document checks. So there's a full vetting process that happens, and then subsequent to that, there's training. And so after we actually take a Vallie through the whole kind of verification and interview process, we give them a good bit of training that's both technologically based. They learn how to use the apps that we make for them, but they also learn how to use apps that we use as part of our operations, things like Slack. All the
Right.
Vallies are Slack group chats.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's real world training where we make sure they understand the layouts of different car parks and understand the best practices of driving different cars and navigating the streets of London.
Sure. No, that's awesome. So I'm kind of curious to know how do you guys kind of monetize the company?
It's very much through parking. One of the really interesting things about parking is the pricing rationale behind it.
Right.
Which, there's different reasons why car parks are priced the way they are. The short story is that it's not always rational. And for most car parks, it's stepwise, right? That if you park for 1 hour, it's more expensive than if you park for 5 hours. Then if you park for 1 week, it's cheaper. If you park for 1 month, it's even cheaper. And so what we do is we take advantage of that, where we book parking in mass and at longer durations with car parks that are just a little bit further than you would walk yourself. So if
Okay.
that car park's like 7 blocks away, it ends up being a little bit cheaper anyway. And then when we layer on the kind of volume discounts that we look for, we get a significantly cheaper rate, which allows us to pass on that savings to the consumer. You may have noticed that I mentioned earlier that the average price of parking is £40 across
Yep.
London. Our rate is actually £25 per day.
Wow. That's a really cool, awesome savings. So I'm kind of curious then, how how do you guys, I guess, decide what kind of areas to cover and kind of what areas to kind of move into?
I think one of the things the business really needs is a concentration of parking activity.
Okay.
So it's naturally the on-demand parking model is naturally suited towards downtown areas, CBDs call them. We launched in the City of London. That's the financial area to the east of the centre of London, with a focus on commuter parking. We had a successful pilot through November and December, but we saw a lot of demand for West End parking, which tends to be a mix of shoppers. It could be mothers heading out during the day to do midweek chores. It could be people working in non-financial service sectors, such as the media industry, and also people coming into London from out of town. And they might be coming in for multi-day parks, so arriving during the day, during midday, and staying for not just one, possibly even 2 or 3 days. So we really wanted to be able to offer every person signing up a use case, whether that be commuting to the city during the week or shopping in the later part of the day, or even on Saturdays. When we launched, we were just open Monday to Friday. We quickly opened up on Saturdays. Saturday is one of our busiest days of the week. And we're even still seeing a lot of inbound inquiries about whether we'll be open later in the evening to service sort of theatre and restaurant hours. And we're thinking carefully about this, and constantly, evaluating people's individual use cases.
Sure, like I can imagine that, in the evening and like you mentioned on weekends, like I can imagine in the evening would be very lucrative for you. Like I know even just being in big cities like LA or whatnot, just trying to find parking at some restaurant just to go for dinner can be kind of a nightmare and you have to park, blocks away. So I think it would make a lot of sense for you guys to kind of do that eventually in the evening if it makes sense in certain parts of the world.
Potentially, yes. There's definitely, some non-obvious considerations around doing business in the evenings, but it's something that we're constantly looking at very very carefully. And if there's profitable business to be had by opening in the evenings, then we'll certainly look at that.
Sure. So I'm kind of curious. You mentioned some kind of challenges. I'm curious to know what are some things that are the challenges that, the average person wouldn't consider when, you guys are looking to kind of expand hours or open up into new neighborhoods or cities.
Well, the major challenge in the business is concurrency.
Sure.
When we have kind of a lot of people who want their car who want to drop off their cars in the morning. Not that many people, in the mid morning from 9:30 onwards. Then we get a little bit of a spike during lunchtime, where people are either taking their cars back or actually dropping them off again. And then we return a lot of those cars at night. So that's the kind of most complex part of the business that we have to manage because we need a lot of valleys on staff during peak times, but we don't really need that many valleys during off-peak times. Um, so we have different ways of managing that. First and foremost, it's a flexible shift scheduling model
Okay.
where a lot of our valleys work just 2 or 3 hours at a time. All our valleys are in fact part-time and work around this flexible shift scheduling model. And the other part is learning customer behavior and being able to kind of predict the ebbs and flows as we scale. And so as long as we can manage that, we can run a pretty successful business.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And are you gonna eventually tie into maybe somebody's, I don't know, personal calendar or something? Like where I'm getting at is basically, could I say that I have, 3 meetings off site today and I'm gonna leave the office by, I don't know, 6 p.m. or something. And then you guys automatically pick me up at the times that I'm slotted in based on kind of my calendar, where it's like, I know Google Maps does it really well saying like you need to leave by X amount of time, to get to your meeting at this location based on traffic. Like, are you guys thinking of kind of doing that kind of personal integration at some point?
That's definitely part of the dream. Our system is built with an API architecture that allows us to, the apps are talking to a central server. We have an Android app that's in development as well. And so, it's talking to the same API. So there's no reason why, your calendar couldn't also, book requests automatically through our API and why, a smart car or autonomous vehicle couldn't potentially book requests through an API as well.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. So I'm kind of curious to know what other cities are you guys thinking of moving into?
That's a good question. Robin alluded to the fact earlier that we need kind of a density,
Sure.
of cars and traffic and parking to for the service to be successful in the current model. And so when we look to where we can expand next, we definitely have not made any decisions yet, but it will be a mix of kind of what partners we're working with here that can help us expand to different cities, and also the kind of parking dynamics. Just to name a few cities, there's other cities in the UK alone that where this model will definitely work. Manchester and Birmingham being two examples, and then of course major cities throughout Europe:
Sure.
Paris, Berlin, Milan, Madrid. All the capitals suffer from parking problems, and it's a problem that we can help with.
Sure. No, I think that's really cool, and I love kind of how you're taking just like a industry that really hasn't changed that much in decades, and you're kind of re-envisioning and reimagining and solving like a real problem. So I'm curious to know kind of where do you guys kind of see yourself going in kind of throughout the rest of the year, maybe feature wise, or what are you guys kind of working on and where do you kind of see it going in the next year or two outside of kind of maybe expanding to new markets?
we it took us 5 months to release the first version of the app on the App Store, and even then we had a ton of pipeline features from a technology point of view. This could be anything, just to list some examples, from integrating additional services, for instance, where we could look at offering automated bookings for requests for car washing, MOTs, other kind of mechanical work. dry cleaning services. Uh, then you actually mentioned earlier around fitting into a customer's schedule, and so pre-booking both drop-off and return times. Also interesting pipeline features. They're kind of the obvious ones.
Okay.
We have some more interesting, exciting things we want to work out, which I won't share with you now.
Sure.
But there's definitely a strong development pipeline from a technical point of view. But for the time being, we have our hands very busy just managing and balancing operations with our fundraising activities. So really, the next 6 months, the profile of the next 6 months sees us going through a fundraising round at the minute, closing that, and then using that capital to establish Vallie as the market-leading parking technology app in London and the dominant on-demand parking company, hopefully the most successful name in Europe at that stage. And that's really the lie of the land for 2016. And then I think, some point towards the end of the year, we'll be thinking about additional funds and spreading out throughout the UK and getting into Europe.
Yeah, if I could just add to that from like
Sure.
a product perspective, I think we're what we built thus far is very much, I think, MVP. We have like a long way to go, and in the in the for the rest of this year, I think a lot of the features that we'll be launching have very much to do with with scaling. We're splitting out our back end into more of a microservices architecture rather than like kind of a single service monolith that it currently is, and also, as Robin mentioned, creating a great user experience around the additional services. Right now, we manage a lot of those additional services through our in-app chat. If you download our app, you can actually chat with us right inside the app, and that's where we do a lot of other fun stuff. We take people's car for car washes. We will refill your tank of gas, and there's not actually a UI for that in the app. That just happens via chat right now. Over time, over the coming months, we definitely want to bring that into kind of a formalized app experience.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. I love those features. Like, some people hate me for saying this, but I'm not really a car guy. So if you can take the like parking and then obviously you mentioned kind of like maybe dry cleaning or take it for an oil change or wash my car, I would love that. Like that is awesome that you guys provide those types of services because I hate doing those things. And if I could just offload that to somebody else, I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I would, like obviously it's cool that you guys are doing that and that you're looking at integrating those into the app. And I think that's kind of important to mention that you guys launched with a handful of features and services, and that you're constantly integrating and adding new ones, and you're reaching out and talking to customers to decide kind of where to take the app and in-app kind of features. I think that's super important and really cool that you guys are kind of doing that. And I think a lot of people just spend months or years trying to perfect everything where you guys launched without everything that you want down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. We launched early and we broke it quick, and then we fixed it frantically, and we're kind of at a stable place now. So it's very much about listening to our users and getting that feedback.
Sure. No, that's awesome. And it sounds like it's been well received so far.
I think it's probably worth chipping in there as well. The business operating profitably as well as at scale, it relies on real optimization, in terms of workforce scheduling, where people should be when to assign orders to valleys, these kind of optimizations. Let's say that things are automated. There's not that much that happens manually at the minute, but obviously the complexity of running an efficient business like this as you scale gets more and more interesting
Sure.
and more and more challenging. And so I think that's a real part of the focus in the next 3 to 4 months is how we can optimize and expand our margins. And that's obviously a big precursor to raising venture capital funding as well.
we're super focused on building a real business that generates real profits in the near term, and we think we're pretty much on the cusp of that. And I think that's not the case for a lot of different startups, right? Where you kind of fund exploration and there's a continuing product development cycle before monetization. We're very much at the point where I think we have a product that's that people like. We have a model that can generate margins. It's up to us to execute that successfully and scale it successfully.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And I like how you kind of mentioned that, well, you guys have kind of like a real business model behind the whole thing, right? And I think a lot of startups forget that. And I think, yeah, like the quicker you can be profitable, the easier it is to kind of raise money. I'm not saying it's raising money like just automatically people are going to throw money at you, but it makes it a lot easier if you can show numbers and you show users and that you're already generating some revenue. And I think a lot of startups kind of forget that.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of curious to know how big is your development team?
Not that big.
No, okay.
Yeah,
Like,
so me and Robin, and then we have three counterparts in Bangladesh, two of whom are full time. One is kind of a part time administrator.
okay.
Then we have we have two consultants as well here in the UK who kind of like fix stuff. Like me and Robin write a bunch of messy code, and then the consultants come in and they're like, "Oh, you should have done this and this," and then we listen to them, and they also do help us, but they're very much on like a contractual part time basis.
Sure. No, I always find it interesting to know kind of how people structure their teams because you read so many things where you need this like huge team of people and you need all this money and like I like kind of just hearing the real reality. Like some guy I know some companies still do client work, right? And nobody really talks about that. And you guys, it's like obviously you guys have some part-timers and some you guys write your own code. I think that's really cool and it's really kind of important to mention that you guys are still kind of in the trenches building the app as well, right? Even if it gets rewritten by somebody else in the future.
I think that's actually a really important thing to emphasize. When Nash and I got started, we didn't start by talking to external developers. We started by learning the Apple Xcode developer environment, and we spent sort of the better part of 2 months developing sufficient expertise to build, sort of version 1.0 of the app ourselves. And the difference in terms of how close you are to the code, it just makes a huge difference as founders to run a technology team effectively.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's really good advice. So I'm kind of curious to know, um, how do I phrase it? How you guys kind of see, and how you guys kind of manage, like when to kind of hire new kind of people on the development side, or or even kind of new employees. Like how do you guys kind of manage, kind of hiring these two different types of kind of personalities, for lack of a better term?
Well, I think it's based on very much the experience that we have and the quality of the individual.
Okay.
Right now, our kind of next hire is after we close this round of funding, our next hire is definitely an operations manager. And Robin and myself, our both of our jobs as founders of the startup have kind of evolved so dramatically. It changes from week to week. Most recently, we've been spending a lot of time in fundraising, meeting with investors and all that, and also a lot of time doing customer support. We're getting a lot of inbound phones ringing every day, all day. We're getting emails, in-app chats, both from customers who are in the process of an order and customers who are kind of just exploring and learning about the business. So when you think about hiring, like, we think about where the bottlenecks are right now.
Sure.
The bottlenecks, we aren't actively developing new features. We're fixing stuff is what we're doing, and we do that very much on the fly, we do that pretty quickly. Whereas the bottleneck is definitely on the operations side, both managing our hiring process and our team of Vallies out in the field, and then also on the customer support. So first hire would be an operations manager, and would be someone who We actually have a great candidate in mind already. And then beyond that, we just actually want to grow our current team on the development side. As I mentioned, we have an offshore team in Bangladesh. We want to add a few guys there. We have two really great consultants, one iOS consultant and one kind of Node.js backend consultant who we want to engage a lot more than we have. And we think that's the model that works for us. We've successfully built a lot of product in this model, and we just kind of want to grow with it.
No, I think that's awesome, and I think that's really important to kind of stress that, and I think it's also awesome that you guys do customer support. I've heard that from kind of a bunch of like founders and CEOs that they sometimes even spend an entire day, a month, even well after their company's really profitable. They've been running for number of years. They still go back and do kind of customer support. So I think it's pretty cool that you guys are still doing that. Even as kind of founders, and you guys still find the time to do that throughout your day, because I'm sure it's quite busy managing everything else, right?
Yeah, we have to, and we learn so much. We're even Vallies sometimes. Like Robin
Oh,
did
really?
a return yesterday. Because you just get so much insight into the product and the user experience and how people are perceiving the whole experience, whether it's from the website or from the app or from meeting a Vallie on the street, and is his jacket dirty? Like there's all that type of minor detail that that influences your perception of the service and the product. And we need to hear all that, and we learn from it, and hopefully make it better.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's awesome that you guys are kind of care that much about the business and whatnot, and still kind of do some of that stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it only makes your product better, like you mentioned, and so that's really fascinating. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show, guys. So maybe let's close the show with where people can find you guys online, get the app, and any other kind of social media stuff you guys want to promote for the company or you guys personally.
Absolutely. You can visit our website anytime, www.vallie.co.uk. You can search us on the iTunes App Store. Just search Vallie, Vallie again. On social media, we're present everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Our handles are Vallie My Car. So just look up Vallie My Car on Twitter and send us a message. If you download our app or if you visit our website, we have live chat. So you can potentially, it's usually me or Robin actually answering the chat. So if you do want to have a chat directly with us, just click the chat icon on the website or when you download the iPhone app.
Very cool, guys. Well, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and I kind of look forward to following where you guys take this throughout the rest of the year and into the future.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
All right, thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
We'll talk soon.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.